why are they going to Colombia over any other country? This just feels slightly random. Yeah, I still think that she's adopted the late Queen's approach of keeping her cards close to her chest. I think people feel connected to her, but I still think that she has remained really successfully, maybe more than any other member of the royal family, something of an enigma. Kate has been of such huge interest recently, and then suddenly to see that everyone was actually talking about William's beard, and that's what everyone wanted to talk about.
Hello, I'm Matt Wilkinson, and welcome to our show, Royal Exclusive. With me today is royal journalist Victoria Murphy. Welcome, Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. Now, the big thing at the moment, Duke and Duchess of Sussex in Colombia. I think the question everybody is asking is, why are Harry and Meghan in Colombia?
Yeah, I mean, it is a very good question. Why are they going to Colombia over any other country? Yes, they've been invited, but probably they have lots of invitations. And, I mean, you don't kind of make a business plan or a career plan based on who invites you. They've got to have their own reasons for going to be saying yes to this. And I think it is a little bit baffling in comparison perhaps with Nigeria, because when they went to Nigeria, it was very clear that trip was an Invictus-focused trip. I kind of felt that was a very clear purpose for that trip. And also Meghan had discovered that she was 43% Nigerian, so it made sense from that point of view as well. And also Harry's long-term interest in African countries and a lot of the charity work that he's done on the continent already. So that kind of made a lot more sense. And this just feels slightly random. And yes, we're talking about themes that they're going to focus on, but it's quite vague as to exactly how specifically they're going to be focusing on those themes and why they've chosen Colombia to highlight those themes. One of the things that they're talking about is this conference that's coming up in November that's been cited in relation to their trip, a child safety conference, obviously really important, but I'm still not quite sure what it has to do with them, because they're not going to the conference. It would make sense to me if they were going to the conference and that's their purpose for going to Colombia, but they're not. And I don't think that they're going to have any presence at the conference. We don't know that for sure yet. I don't know what your sort of understanding on that point is, but it seems I don't really understand why the conference is being mentioned in connection with their visit. It feels slightly, the two things don't seem necessarily connected to me.
Well, I think that's, I think the reason why they're going is for self-publicity. I think, Nigeria was almost like a dummy run. I think it was reasonably, it went without any problems, Nigeria.
It was
received quite well, and, I think they came out with it with great confidence. But you mentioned about invites. I mean, it was the Vice President that has invited Harry and Meghan, and you do begin to wonder, could anyone now invite Harry and Meghan to come to their country and have a 3 or 4 day tour to add a little bit of royal stardust? I mean, anyone can now invite Harry and Meghan because we don't really know why they are going to Colombia.
Yeah, I mean, I feel that they must have been invited to other places as well, and they have clearly chosen to say yes to this. And as I said, it's not really clear why. I think, we've seen a little bit of negative coverage around the upcoming trip already. Some suggestions in some articles that they are being used as political pawns by the government. I mean, let's be clear. So this is a person who's spoken anonymously to the Mail on Sunday suggested that there might be the feeling of this, and this has been widely repeated. I'm not aware of anyone saying it on the record in Colombia, and I think it's quite difficult when you're here, and indeed when you're in America, to actually understand what the feeling is in Colombia about this visit, how interested people are, how aware people are of them, what the feeling is across the country, indeed if it's even the same across the country about this trip. But I think, members of the royal family have been to Colombia before, but of course, when a working royal goes, as Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh did last December, they are there representing a country, they're representing Britain. They have the input of the British Embassy and of other organisations like the British Council, and Sophie was out there doing work on behalf of the UN, the United Nations Women, Peace and Security Agenda. So she was affiliated with all these other organisations, and the itinerary was shaped collaboratively with the Colombian government, what they wanted to showcase and what the British Embassy, with all of their experience and knowledge on the ground, felt that it would be a good idea to highlight as well. And with Harry and Meghan's trip, what makes that different, because they're no longer working royals, is the fact that it's hard to see what level of input they or Archewell, who they're representing out there, can have had in the itinerary. Because what knowledge do they or does Archewell have? What independent knowledge do they have or have they been given on what is going on in the areas that they're visiting? So has the itinerary been entirely shaped by the Colombian government, and has that made them vulnerable to these conversations, these comments that have been made? So I think that's what we talk about when we talk about the difference between what's different about it when a working royal goes and when Harry and Meghan.
I've tried to speak to people connected with Colombia or in Colombia, and the gist I get is that this is a new government, a new left-wing government, and the Vice President has made this invite. I don't think Harry and Meghan, my latest information is they're not going to meet the President. There was talk about maybe a private kind of face-to-face meeting, but it's all on the strength of this Vice President. People in Colombia are, I'm led to believe, I'm happy to be corrected, they're concerned about the amount of money that's being spent. Colombia is not a rich country, a lot of money's being spent on security, and also people are treating it as a royal tour. People are seeing it as it's the King's son, it's Princess Diana's son. It's and these are the dangers, these are the pitfalls they might fall into, because it'll end up that it appears that they are representing the British royal family, and if things go wrong, then that's a real danger for them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. So Harry and Meghan, we have this ongoing conversation about them, don't we? They've stepped back. They're no longer officially representing the royal family, but Harry is still the King's son. When they go out there and say things and do things, it can look very similar, even though the underlying purpose is very different. But the optics of it on the surface can look very similar to when they were working royals, and that can be confusing for people, and people will say, well, what they're doing and what they're saying can still affect how the British royal family is seen. And so this is an ongoing conversation. But yeah, you're right to raise the point, which is a good point about who pays, because of course when members of the royal family make overseas visits on behalf of the foreign and Commonwealth, with the exception of Commonwealth realms where King Charles is now also head of state, it's the British government who pays. They get the sovereign grant to pay for their travel, and the British government picks up the tab. So that's different now to Harry and Meghan going to Colombia. We don't know. They haven't said who is paying, but it seems more likely that it's Colombia who's paying than someone else. It's not clear, completely clear.
What do you think Harry and Meghan are hoping to get out of this trip to Colombia?
Well, I think that what I don't really understand is how this fits into their long-term purpose and the long-term purpose of Archewell. I think in a short term, you can see that there's going to be a huge amount of attention on this tour, and probably they feel that they want to highlight these areas that they've said, women's empowerment and the military community, and it all sounds, like the intention is very positive. And I think they'll be hoping that they can shine a light on the things that they think are important. But as I said, if they haven't, how much independent control have they had over this programme, and how much knowledge do they have of already, or have they been given independently of the areas and the projects that they're visiting? I don't get the long-term thing. I don't get that. My personal feeling. Sorry, just to jump in, but I always felt that they work best when it's very clear what they're doing. And I think Invictus is the strongest example of that. People really understand what it is, what it stands for. It's an event as well as a community. And when they go out there and talk about Invictus, it feels very meaningful and very powerful, and it resonates with everyone. And I feel that they should be focusing, it's just my opinion, I'm not advising them, I don't think that would ever happen, that they should be identifying some other really key, really specific areas where they can focus on and do a similar thing, and people will really get, yes, they're doing this work on, for example, women's empowerment, they're doing it time and time again, and in these very specific ways, and everything feeds into that. This feels a little bit vaguer. This trip feels much more vague in terms of how it fits into their long-term plan. Mm-hmm. So what were you going to say about?
I was going to say, you've obviously seen Harry and Meghan in action on royal tours. How do you expect them to be received? So Harry, we talk about this kind of almost every week, that when he is on engagements, when he was a working royal, he was popular. People, reacted very well to him. Meghan didn't take to being a working royal. She didn't spend a lot of time, but she did do several tours like this, actual royal tours representing the UK government, not representing themselves and representing Archwell in a Latin American country. But you've seen them on the ground in, I think, was it South Africa? You must have seen them.
Yeah. So was this before you? Yeah. So it was Morocco. Was there when Meghan was pregnant, actually, with Archie. They went to Morocco on a very short visit, and then a much bigger visit where they took Archie to South Africa in 2019. And before that as well, obviously, observed Harry for a long time. I always think Harry was so popular as a working royal for sort of maybe one of the reasons, almost the same reason that he can be unpopular now, is that he didn't hold back. He was always, in every situation, you felt that he was really being very authentic and very honest. And I think sometimes his PR people were like, okay, like that's enough. But because if you were talking to him, he would just talk, and he would tell you what he thought. And I think that was what people liked about him. And obviously, he's been incredibly open since he left the royal family, and that has turned some people off. But he was, there's always been a real authenticity to him. And I think that he and Meghan, when they were doing trips together, it felt very powerful. It did. It felt very powerful, and it felt like a really exciting time for the royal family to have this couple. We also talk about them as appealing to a new generation, which is interesting because they're pretty much the same age as William and Kate, but somehow it felt like they had this whole younger audience that they were appealing to. And I thought, when they went to South Africa, when Meghan, right at the start of that trip, she made a speech about being a woman of colour, and it, just felt really powerful. And that whole tour of South Africa felt so positive. And then at the very end, the story completely changed because they announced that they were suing the Mail on Sunday. And that was really, I think, the start of everything shifting. And it was the start of, I think, the floodgates opening and all of that stuff that had been simmering underneath the surface about how unhappy they were, about how angry they were with the media. That all kind of started from then on to really come out. And that was the point at which what the royal household has sort of contained a bit, the true strength of the fallouts and everything just all came out after that.
But in many ways, that's kind of when they took control, or they attempted to take control, and now they are in control of what they're doing by taking Archwell and doing a tour of Colombia.
Yeah, I always said, people would say about them, why are they going out and being public? Because they wanted privacy. This is hypocritical. That was one of the accusations that was always thrown at them. And I always said, they never said that they wanted to have a totally private life. They actually said they wanted a different kind of public life. They wanted to have control. They didn't want to have this thing of being taxpayer funded hanging over their heads that made them feel that they had obligations and had to agree to certain types of access from the media that they didn't want to have. And they wanted to set up their own thing and to have control. And they do have that now. I think the question is whether or not they can be as powerful as they were when they were in the royal family, because the weight that they had behind them of the institution and of the access to everything the British government has access to is obviously very different to what they have now. But they have achieved what they wanted to achieve.
Just finally on Colombia, we mentioned it earlier about the invite, and they could have. We don't know. They might have. I've heard rumours about invites to other places. But when we look at Colombia, and I've been to Colombia, it's a lovely country. The people are wonderful. But when you look at the politicians, that are involved, just a quick list. And I don't want to insult Colombia in any way, but Health Minister is under investigation for allegedly using planes during a campaign that's belonged to a convicted drug runner. Foreign Minister suspended alleged corruption. President's son charged with taking cash from drug traffickers. President's brother accused of seeking payments from a jailed drug dealer for judicial benefits. And the president himself faced allegations he cheated on his wife with a transgender TV host. They've got to be careful about what they're doing and who they're accepting invites. We don't know. Is North Korea going to invite them one day?
I don't know. But we don't know who they're going to meet, obviously. But I think, Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, I always struggled not to call her Countess of Wessex, but yeah, Duchess of Edinburgh, she met Francia Márquez, the Vice President as well, but of course she was there meeting her, representing Britain. And so it was very clear what Sophie represented, and it was not the interests of the Colombian government or the, she was clear that she was representing Britain at that time, and I think that's what the working royals have. It's that their message, their purpose, their representation is very clear when they go to other countries. And with Harry and Meghan, it's not quite clear what Archewell's stance on lots of things is, in the same way.
100%, totally agree with you. I'm seeing this as almost like when Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie would go abroad and do certain events and do speeches and try to do philanthropic kind of work. It feels like that they're just putting themselves into the celebrity sphere, but reminding everyone, hey, we are also royal as well. But
there's no doubt it will attract so much attention, and that's the thing, that it's like, what is the purpose of that attention, and how thought through is how that's being channelled,
Yeah. Just quickly, I want to touch on one thing that they did announce. They did a video recently, did a video interview in America. They talked about a new scheme called the Parents Network. I think this is about online bullying, and it's a serious issue, in 2024. I mean, these are things that are affecting families all over the world. What do you think of this project? I mean, Meghan's complained or mentioned about the way that she felt she's been bullied in the past, or the problems they've both mentioned about issues about bullying and misbehaviour online. Do you think this is one of their projects that you could see succeeding?
I mean, I will say this is a subject that for me right now is so important for me, because I have a daughter who's just turned 11 and she's going to go to secondary school in September. And this smartphone thing, can I have a smartphone? Can I have social media? Is a question that parents get asked around this time. And I have been reading up a lot on the studies that are available about the dangers of social media and the information that has started to come through in the past few years since more children have had access to social media. And it is really terrifying how big an implication this can have on children. And I think this cause is absolutely brilliant. I think it's exactly the right kind of thing to be highlighting. And the Parents Network, it seems to be it's an organisation that parents who have had children whose lives have been affected. Some of them have lost their lives, some of them have had terrible life-changing experiences as a result of social media, can join as a support network. That's what it is. When you read the case studies, they're so moving. As they seem to all be US-based, so I don't know if this organisation is solely US-based or if it's international as well. But the case studies seem to be US-based. I
think they even spoke about that in the interview, that it did seem to be quite a small
I
setup.
think it's a really important cause for them to be championing. The question is, has it had the attention that it deserves? Will it get the ongoing attention that it deserves? Does that matter? I mean, sometimes it's not about the attention, sometimes it's about what the project is doing. And you have a lot of these projects, same with some of William and Kate's projects, they go along in the background and they're doing really good work, and it's not, everyone isn't necessarily talking about it all the time, but it's really important. So it could be that, but again, with them, I wonder whether it's something they could have made more impact with talking about as working royals. But I think it's really important. I think it's really important, and the fact they're talking about it, I think it's something to be really worried about, actually. And I guess maybe I'm at that point because of my daughter's age where I'm really thinking about it, and I don't know if everyone is, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, no, I could see it. I welcome it. I could see it, succeeding. But they do often come up with many, many ideas. There always seems to be a new project and stuff like that every 6 months or so.
I don't know how you feel, but I kind of feel like sometimes it's hard to see, again, with the exception of Invictus, it's hard to see how everything fits together. And I think when you're a working royal, you've got that umbrella of the institution of the monarchy, and so you can have all these scattered things, but they come together under that umbrella. And with Harry and Meghan, I feel that they would benefit from being more focused on certain things and really hammering that point home to the public. This is what they represent. I don't think they've quite done that yet.
Well, maybe this is worth talking about Josh Kettler. Their recent who's head of their organisation that left after 3 months. I mean, maybe the lack of direction or the lack of clarity could possibly due to the huge turnover of staff that they have. I remember, I've written down here, I remember Mandana Dayani, do you remember she was the president of Archwell? She left in December 2022. And a statement, I saw this the other day, a statement that came from Archwell at the time said that her transition was mutually planned. The intent for the Duke and Duchess is to now take full lead of the company. I mean, I just wonder if there's kind of friction within Archwell, that they don't know what direction they're going. There's too many voices that are in for just a couple of months and then leaving, short period after. Maybe that leads to a lack of clarity and direction.
I think that can affect any organisation, definitely. I think they said that he had left by mutual agreement, but of course, he clearly didn't start that job intending to leave after 3 months. So it was obviously, it wasn't working for whatever reason from both sides. And I think it's really hard to find the right people actually for an organisation, because it's a question of people who maybe might sometimes tell you things you don't want to hear, but will steer you in a direction that it's important for you to go in, and that versus people who will be more cheerleadery for you, but maybe won't come up, and I think that's the balance. I always think James Holt has worked for them for a very long time, and he obviously worked at the royal household as well. And I always really liked James. I always found him to be really good, and he's still there. But yes, other people have definitely come and gone. And I think everyone benefits from having someone who will maybe question what they're doing and push them in a different direction, maybe. So I don't know whether they've had that, whether they're open to that. We don't know. This is the thing. We don't. It's very difficult to know how things have gone on behind the scenes with them.
But we can look at the numbers and the amount of staff that when they were working at the palace that left, and then since they've been working at Archwell, they do have quite a high turnover. But
Yeah, I think. Some people might say, Matt, just putting it out there, that there's been a few private secretaries left on the Cambridge side as well over recent years, and it's not always the case that there's a huge fallout, it just isn't. So, yeah.
Fair enough. Let's talk about back home.
Yeah.
In the UK. And we've had some awful riots in the last couple of weeks. The far-right riots, I think they're being described as. And there was a bit of debate whether the King should come out and make some kind of statement, because it was huge for about a week.
Yeah.
It was dominated the news, everything that was going on in the streets, all the issues, politicians were getting involved, lots of arrests. It's bringing up so many issues. But did we need the King to come out and make a statement, or are you happy with the way that he reacted? Because it was via a spokesman where he.
I'd be interested to know what you think on this as well. But I know that there were calls. I mean, the Republic said, that he's the head of state. He should be uniting people. And there was an article, was it The Spectator, where someone said, he should speak out. I felt like it was very clear that Buckingham Palace. I felt it was very clear that he wanted to be engaged, and I felt it was clear that Buckingham Palace wanted it to be known that he wanted to be engaged, and that he wanted to be kept up to date. But he didn't make any kind of statement, did he, while tensions were at their highest? And I guess you have to look at a number of things, what advice is he getting from government on that? We don't know what advice he's getting from government, and whether or not he's bound by that advice, whether or not he can make a decision autonomously on that kind of thing. Also, I don't think it's so much a question of being party political, in the sense that I don't think you would be accused of being party political. It's more to do with, this is a time of really heightened tensions. So is saying something, is there a risk of being accused of inflaming that in any capacity? Is it better to leave things to the police and the government in that time? You don't know what these considerations are. I mean, what were your sort of feelings on?
Well, my feeling was timing is everything. I mean, if you think back to COVID, there was a little bit of movement where it was like, well, is the late Queen going to say anything? When's the Queen? And we were hearing, is she going to record a statement? Is she going to, put something out? And it was the right time when she did her "We Will Meet Again" address. It just felt, we waited a bit of time. This feels like it's the right time. And I think with the King, I don't think the time was right. I mean, if it was still rumbling on and things were actually becoming totally chaotic, I don't think it was his place to come out and give some kind of unifying speech. I mean, I know he, in the comment that's put out, he was greatly encouraged by community spirit. I mean, these are the right things.
Yeah. So that's what I thought that he was glad perhaps to have the opportunity of the quite heartwarming anti-racist protests that were peacefully held in many places when we had thought that there might be lots of riots. And, I live in Walthamstow actually, and so that was, to see that huge kind of protest, people in the streets, and all peaceful. After I'd been walking through Walthamstow earlier in the day and there was so many police and it felt really tense, like it felt like what's going to happen in a few hours. We don't know what's going to happen, and all these police had come in anticipation that something might. And then in the end, it was this kind of really heartwarming, peaceful show of community spirit. And so for him, it felt like he was glad to be able to say something about that, because that was a really positive message, and then he could praise the police and he could praise the people who had shown that community spirit.
We both know that he's a huge supporter of interfaith dialogue. I mean, earlier this year I was at Buckingham Palace, and this was just after the situation in Gaza, and he had religious leaders from main religions all at Buckingham Palace having interfaith dialogue, and then he set up a kind of Windsor leadership group where I think it was like 13 or 15 religious leaders could meet and chat. I mean, even at the coronation.
Yeah, his coronation was, the first truly sort of multi-faith coronation that we've had in this country, and that was a real testament to his determination that that's what he wanted it to be. He absolutely has credibility on having a long-term investment in those kinds of conversations. And
so behind the scenes, you would imagine the people that he speaks to, the religious leaders that he has contacts with, he would be, talking to them and working the best he can, but maybe wasn't the right time for some kind of big address at Buckingham Palace.
And also, like you say, about the right time, and we don't see the head of state make addresses sort of left, right and centre, and it does need to be really considered maybe for a bit of time as to what the right thing to do is and when the right thing to do that kind of thing.
Be a good time to talk about royal relevance.
Okay,
Obviously, the King was not involved or could have been involved in, serious news issue of that week, but there's been some recent polling that I think we want to talk about into the popularity of the British royal family. So we've got some figures here from recent polls. The recent polling shows that 47% of 18 to 24-year-olds have a negative view of the royal family, compared to 39% positive. So that, are young people not fully engaged with the royal family these days? By contrast, 77% of older people has a positive view of the royal family. Is it the case that age is simply a factor here, or is the royal family not coming across as relevant to many younger people? I
mean, in some ways it's not surprising, because I think polling has long shown that older people favour the monarchy over younger people. So the question is, does that trend just carry on, and when those 18 to 24, 25-year-olds get older, they then become part of the 77% when they're 65 plus? Is that what happens? Or is it the case that now the generation who are 18 to 24 will continue to have those more critical views of the monarchy? And I think there is a vulnerability that could happen, because I think Queen Elizabeth dying changed a lot. There was an end of an era when she died, and she was much, much more popular than King Charles is as an individual. There's no getting away from that. He's far lower than her in terms of popularity.
Well, I've got some numbers on that, if you like.
Yeah, I'd love
I've got the late Queen currently has an 84% positive view, while King Charles is just 56%.
Yeah, and she was always that high throughout her lifetime as well, and so I don't see that changing, really. And in many ways, you could say, if you look back to 30 years ago, when Charles was 20, 25, 30 years ago, when Charles, Prince of Wales, was very unpopular, and when Camilla was really reviled, it's actually fantastic for him that he has got the polling that he has, and that she has been accepted in the way that she has as Queen. That is something that I think lots of people would have not believed 20 years ago that would have happened, and there would have been no pushback on that. So it's sort of relative in that sense. But the monarchy has been around for centuries, obviously, but throughout Queen Elizabeth's reign, there was perhaps more change than we ever saw in the centuries and in the reigns before that. And a lot of change in attitudes towards deference, towards hierarchy occurred throughout her time as queen. And there is always that question of, does it make sense to have hereditary head of state, hereditary privilege in a modern democracy, in a society that considers itself to be a meritocracy? And that is, one of the reasons why a lot of other countries don't have it. There's always that question. And so I think it does come down to the popularity of the individuals. And in some cases, it probably comes down to, what the alternatives are and whether they're even actually proposed. And I think what we're seeing now is, I don't think we see as much active excitement about Charles as we did about Queen Elizabeth, or active kind of outward love and respect that she commanded. But we're not seeing people who are really actively disliking him. I'm not getting the mood out there, or the polling isn't really showing that he is a figure who people don't want. I say there's a maybe more apathetic sort of mood.
Well, we've had a lot of huge events. I mean, maybe people just want to maybe just turn away from the royal family a little bit. But when I see the king out and about, people are out to see the king. They're not specifically out to see Charles like you would with the late Queen. You go, well, it's the Queen. They're often there for the position. The fact that he is the man who is the king. And
he does have very different status, obviously, to the status that he had. And I found it kind of interesting to see how, there was all of that talk before he became king, and they actually moved to quell some of those rumours by him doing interviews saying things like he's not going to be a meddling monarch, and, how he sees the role as different. But there was all of that talk around what kind of king will he be? Will he be an activist king? Will he campaign? And none of that has materialised. He has moved very much into that role that Queen Elizabeth had, of being incredibly neutral, not speaking out on things. There's lots of things that he hasn't done since he's become king that I think we would have seen him do if he was still Prince of Wales, in terms of climate change, the types of engagements he has, for example. And he seems to be making it very clear that absolutely that role of sovereign and all of those things that involves is what he sees as paramount. And conversely, like William has almost kind of stepped into the role that he had. I feel like William has been very kind of, launching projects in a way that maybe we would associate with Charles. I know he did Earthshot before he became Prince of Wales, but Homewards as well, really kind of sitting down and going, what can we do on these issues? How can we change things? How can we think differently? How can we move forward in that sort of way?
Well, the king was very clear when he did his accession speech, like the 2 days after or the day after his mother died, and he said, I can no longer do or get involved in certain issues and projects and charities and stuff like that I could when I was Prince of Wales. But now William has that freedom, as you rightly pointed out, to say homelessness is going to be something that he's going to be fighting for, or calling for years. But William now has that freedom to really get stuck into stuff that maybe...
And he has more at his disposal. So he has the Duchy of Cornwall now, which he didn't have. He has the money from the Duchy of Cornwall, which is a lot of money. Exactly. I mean, that's the other thing. The royal family is costing the British public more than they ever have done now, in recent history anyway, this uplift in the sovereign grant. And the duchies, I think for me, there is definitely a question as to what extent the funding can go on indefinitely without some kind of overhaul, because those duchies were set up a very, very long time ago, and is there an argument for moving towards a more streamlined system with just that sovereign grant, that one method of funding? I think it'll be unravelling the duchies is the thing, because they've got a complex structure, and there are people within the framework who obviously rely on that framework being there. So that's the question. But I do wonder that. This other thing, we talk about slimmed down monarchy, and the royal family has become accidentally slimmed down with Andrew leaving and Harry and Meghan leaving, and people have often talked about the slimmed down monarchy like it's some kind of virtue, slimmed down monarchy, but to me, I've always felt it's kind of meaningless if you're not slimming down the funding, because you're just saying, well, there's fewer people doing stuff, but we're not taking less money. So unless you're talking about overhauling the funding, what are you really slimming down in terms of how is that benefiting the public and the public purse? So I think there's that conversation that I do think will come back in the future, you know?
Well, the funding issue, the only reason I would question the funding issue is because every year when we have to do the reports on the royal family's finances, it's a nightmare day having to go through.
Do you find it? It's my favourite day.
I know you enjoy it. I absolutely
just like the numbers,
looking through those figures. But I generally think they're good value for money. I mean, you think the billions that the government wastes on certain stuff, you know, over the years, that more and more reports come out, the amount of wastage that happens through government. I think the money we actually that comes from us to support the royal family and the benefits that we get back, and we actually have a benevolent leader that doesn't abuse the system for his own gain, like you often get presidents in other countries. I mean, we've been start naming them, but you know, I actually support the fact that we have the royal family, and I particularly support the fact that I don't question too much about their funding, because I think we get great value for money. But talking about relevance, whether the royal family can remain relevant to young people, Prince William's beard. Yeah. Now that was relevant on social media this week,
yeah,
wasn't it?
It's so funny. I just thought that was so funny because obviously, you know, Kate has been of such huge interest recently, and everything she's done has attracted huge amounts of attention. So for me, I was thinking, well, you know, she's appeared in this video and that's going to be the thing that people are interested in and people are talking about, because we haven't seen her anywhere near as much as we normally would. And then suddenly to see that, like, everyone was actually talking about William's beard, and that's what everyone wanted to talk about.
Kensington Palace were the same as well, just between me and you. Just between me and
everyone. But
when they recorded it, they thought, oh, it would be about Snoop Dogg, it would be about David Beckham. They were quite surprised it was all about Prince William's beard. I mean, we've seen him with beards before, but this is a summer beard. So this is, I understand that we won't see him in engagements in September with a fully grown beard. This is just, I'm on holiday, I'm relaxed, I'm just going to put my feet up and let the beard grow out.
A summer beard, okay. I mean, like, yes, I had thought we probably won't see him back in September with a beard, but there's been this kind of conversation over the years, I remember, about should royals, you know, have beards. I think it was more to do with when Harry was in the military, there was that question raised. But it's, you know, the kings with beards is like very much a thing throughout history, you know? So, like, if he did decide to have a beard, then that would be very much in keeping with, you know, tradition. If we look at sort of King George V and Edward VII and way back as well, obviously.
Of course, famously, Harry, allegedly in Spare, he wrote that William was livid that he was able to have a beard in his military uniform.
Yes, so that was the military side, not the royal side, that conversation came up in the context of. I mean, I'm sure that Harry believed that to be the case, but yeah.
Can I ask, was it hot or not, his beard?
I'm absolutely not answering that. I'm
Did he
just
suit the beard?
not thinking like in those terms in any way. I mean, no, I don't. I know I'm not answering is what I'm saying. I have no idea.
Fine.
What do you think?
I thought he suited it. I thought he carried it off quite well. But it is that kind of summer beard where you're on holiday, you know you're not going to be on TV, no one's going to see you in the office.
Except you are then going to be on TV in a video about the Olympics.
Someone asks you to record something to put on social media, and you're in holiday mode. You've left, you know, you haven't shaved, you haven't got rid of your beard. But
you
there
could shave. So he obviously made a choice that he was happy to be seen in his beard. So.
And it broke the internet for a couple of hours. Right, we have some quick-fire questions at the end of this chat, if you are ready and prepared.
I don't know if I am, but OK.
OK, let's get started. Take a deep breath. We're in the middle of August now, so which member of the royal family would you most like to join you on a summer holiday?
So I would say, if I can have a no longer living, I would say 100% Princess Margaret, and it would be in Mystique. I would be joining her in Mystique.
That'll be fun. Yeah, that'll be a party. And current?
Oh, living. I don't know, maybe...
Mike Tyndall, a weekend. I'd go with Mike Tyndall for a city break to like Barcelona or something.
Well, then
like
I'd go with Zara.
You
Me and Zara would have a girly weekend, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Excluding, obviously, Princess Anne and Zara, who have competed, which member of the royal family could best represent Team GB at the Olympics?
I 100% think Kate. I think I would say either sailing or swimming.
Oh, of course.
Yeah. You see, I always knew she was sporty, but I don't think I realised how much swimming was a thing for her. She spoke about it in an interview recently about how she likes to do cold water swimming, and I'd always known she did running, like that was the thing for her. So I found that really interesting because I love swimming as well. But I think she's very sporty, and I think she could absolutely do it.
We should make this happen. Or hockey. I seem to remember.
Yeah, she was always in the hockey team. Yeah.
Okay. When she always gets involved every time there is a sporting event with an engagement, whether it's rugby. I've seen her being picked up when she was at Twickenham, and she was getting involved tennis with Emma Raducanu.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. She could medal.
I totally think so. Yeah.
We did touch on this earlier, and I struggled to get an answer from you, so I'll try it this way. Whose beard is better, Prince Harry or Prince William?
Oh, I've no idea, no thoughts. Also, they were totally different times as well, weren't they? Does Harry have one now? No.
Yeah, he has one now.
Oh, right, okay. He does, you're right. No, I don't know. I don't have any preference.
A more serious question now. What do you think will be the biggest crisis facing the royal family in the next 10 years?
I just think it's going to be something completely unexpected, because all of the past ones have been. I think when I think back to when I started covering the royals, which was like 2010, when William and Kate got engaged, and it was just celebration, celebration after celebration of weddings, babies, Queen Diamond Jubilee, longest reigning monarch, 90th birthday, all of those things. And then it completely changed. The story completely changed, and the focus was on Andrew, and the focus was on Harry and Meghan and how unhappy they were. And I mean, the Andrew thing had been rumbling along for a long time, yes, but I don't think I would have seen then that it would have come to the head that it did many years later, and he's had to step down. And same with Harry and Meghan. I would never have seen that coming, but when they became engaged. And it was just, when Harry would say sort of things. For example, when they issued that statement at the end of their South Africa tour, that was a huge deal because they were really speaking in really strong terms about how they felt about things. And at the time, that was big because we hadn't heard this insight. And then when you look now at how much insight we've had into everything, and the books there, I would never, ever have predicted that, ever. So I think, and COVID obviously totally unpredictable as well. So I just think it will be something unpredictable.
We've got to be prepared for. As royal journalists, you've got to be prepared for anything. I mean, this year, we thought this year would be this big year of peace, of travel, with foreign tours, and it'd be nice for, a calm year. And then we had the King and the Princess of Wales come up,
at the start of this year, again, another, exactly. It was completely out of the blue. No one was expecting to get either of those announcements. So.
Some people think royal journalists have an easy job. We really don't. You've got to be prepared for absolutely. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next 10 years? Yeah. And finally, if you could ask any member of the royal family any question and they have to respond truthfully, who would you ask and what would the question be?
And that's really hard. I'd probably ask Kate for her whole story in her own words, in her truth, because I think she is somebody who, I think people feel connected to her, but I still think that she has remained really successfully, maybe more than any other member of the royal family, something of an enigma. And I think it would, be fascinating to know her thoughts on lots of things.
Yeah, no, it would. She gives away certain bits in the last couple of years. She started to speak a little bit more on engagements and express an opinion and a knowledge of expertise.
Her podcast that she did
things.
a few years ago was very good and very insightful. But yeah, I still think that she's adopted the late Queen's approach of keeping her cards close to her chest and I think, it's always going to be fascinating to know what people really think, isn't it? So.
Yeah, because we heard a lot about when she was, we've heard lots of people have spoken about her when she was younger, when she was at school or at university, but the time when she's been in the royal family, I totally agree with you. That'd be an amazing interview.
Yeah,
amazing chat. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's try and make that happen.
Oh, well.
We'll get her into the Olympics and then we'll interview her after the Olympics. Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Victoria.
You're welcome.
I hope you've enjoyed yourself. I think we've covered a lot and, really interesting chat.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more updates.